Well, good morning and welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. My name is Jim, and we're going to be going through some first round challenges on the Draft Professor Simulator to give an idea as to what the first round possibilities are for some specific teams. This podcast is going to focus primarily on teams. We're going to start at team 9 in the draft order. I'm hoping to do 9 through 17, which would be 8 teams. But if this gets to be too long, I'm just going to cut it off wherever we are at that time. So a first round challenge is a good way to identify what you think a team will do in round 1. Okay, so it is a mock draft. It's a 1-round mock draft. And on the Draft Professor Simulator, you can see the first round challenge over here. Just check that box, pick the team, and we're going to start with the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Kansas City Chiefs in round 1, the player that I would least likely want them to get would be Caleb Downs. So you can see first of all, let's go through what round 1 was. So round 1 right now is Mendoza, Moore, Maui Noah, Bain, Fano, Tate, Lemon, Tyson. That seems reasonable. The Commanders not going defense is mildly surprising, but I mean, that's a great spot for Lemon. They need a receiver. So I could see that, right? Okay, so huge run on wide receivers there in the top 10, right? So 3 receivers go in the first 8 picks. What would the Chiefs do? Okay, so for the Chiefs, I think Caleb Downs as a pick would be my first pick, and I don't necessarily think David Bailey is a Spagnuolo edge from what Chris Connor has communicated. In addition, Bryce Carter has come on the channel to talk about what he thinks the Chiefs would do. He really likes Caleb Downs. Okay, another player that would help the Chiefs would likely be Peter Woods. Okay, so I think he would go at 8. I think Fano, the Chiefs do need a right tackle, and I am taking, if you notice, Tyson's here and Maui Noah's here. So, okay, so I would probably take Maui Noah over Fano if I'm the Chiefs, right? Because they have a right tackle need. Maui Noah might be a guard, but I think Maui Noah would be there. And then if Fano is there this time, okay, so Fano is there this time, I would probably take Fano over Styles, but this is a discussion as to who I would take. So far I've taken Downs, Woods, Maui Noah, Fano. And then if Carnell Tate is there for the Chiefs, I think he would be the pick. Notice that David Bailey is 4. At the beginning of the podcast, he was 2, but because we've skipped picking him, he's moved down the board a little bit. Okay, so I would do Carnell Tate for the 5th one. Okay, so that was Caleb Downs, Peter Woods, Francis Maui Noah, Spencer Fano, Carnell Tate would be my 5 best options for the Chiefs. Okay, so the simulator is interactive. And what I mean by that is the results that you do if you do a first round challenge, or the results for the simulator, if you do a first round challenge, is that if you get A+ grades, those are the players that other users of the simulator are mock drafting against. So the next team in the draft order is the Bengals. I'm expecting to get a lot of A+ grades here, which would imply that my logic and the simulator logic match. And I want to give a shout out to Dale and Ryan Sparks. There's a lot of Bengals fans that use the simulator. So, okay, so what would the Bengals do? So if the draft went this way, and if you notice, Caleb Downs went to the Chiefs. That happened because of the first round challenge I just did. He was not the top player on the board when I started doing that. Okay, so we get a really similar first round to what we saw. I think Arvell Reese to the Bengals makes a lot of sense. And he was the top player on the board, so that should give me an A+ grade. Now, so if Reese is not on the board, so if you look in the second one, the simulator makes sure Reese was taken. What would the Bengals do? I think the Bengals would take Peter Woods over Sonny Styles. Positional value, the Bengals have invested a lot of draft capital at linebacker. So I am told by several Bengals people that the likelihood that the pick would be Sonny Styles would be low. They like Sonny Styles, but the likelihood he's the pick, they said, is low. So if Caleb Downs falls to the Bengals, so Arvell Reese, Peter Woods are off the board, Caleb Downs falls, I think that is a very good pick for the Bengals. Okay. The Bengals also need corner help, and the Bengals, the people that I work with, a draft professor for the Bengals, really like David Bailey. So the question here would be Delane or Bailey. I think Bailey is the higher graded player, so that's what I'm going to take there. There's some off-field issues, some character issues, but I do think David Bailey at 10th overall seems to make sense. Now, if I were running the Bengals, I'd be talking about Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, Viga Ione. None of the Bengals podcasters that are working with draft professor are going offensive line in round one. So I'm going to go Delane, but if somebody were to tell me you got to do offensive line there, I'm not going to call you a liar. Right. So my 5 picks for the Bengals were Reese, Woods, Downs, Bailey, Delane, and the A+ grades indicate that player was the top player on the draft card at the time that I picked them. Okay, so let's go to the next team in the draft order. Okay, so again, we toggle on first round challenge, 5 unique 1-round mocks. And then we're going to do Miami. Okay, so again, this is fans can vote on the simulator for who they want their team to take in round 1. In order to vote, we want you to vote 5 times. So what do we think the Dolphins will do if the draft went like this? Okay, Mendoza, Moore, Maui Noah, Bain, Fano, Tate, Lemon, Tyson, Downs, Reese. So the Dolphins need wide receiver. Most of them are gone. They also need corners. You can see Delane and McCoy are high on their board. They need offensive line help. So they could go a lot of different ways here. They could also do Caleb Downs if he's available. I think he'd be perfect in Miami. So I'm going to go Mansour Delane, round 1 to Miami. And then the simulator, the next time we'll make sure Delane's off the board. Okay, so what would the Dolphins do if the draft fell like this? So in this one, Mekhi Lemon's available. So Miami needs a wide receiver. I think Mekhi Lemon in Miami would be incredible. So I'll pick Mekhi Lemon there. Okay, so in this one, Fano and Maui Noah dropped. So what the simulator does is it makes sure that Delane and Lemon, my 2 first-round picks, are off the board before my pick. What would the Dolphins do? I think Maui Noah is that pick. Okay, so in this one, Delane, Lemon, Maui Noah are off the board. So I would take Caleb Downs in that situation. And then on this last one, it's going to be a little bit different. So the question would be, if Delane, Lemon, Maui Noah, and Downs are off the board, is Miami going to do Jordan Tyson or Spencer Fano? Do they move down the board and look at Peter Woods, Sadiq? Now, some people don't have Sadiq graded high enough to take at 11. And I think that's part of the discussion here and why I like the first round challenge. So I think Sadiq to Miami is a really good fit. Miami does need a tight end, younger tight end, cost-controlled contract on the roster. So I am going to go Sadiq here. But if you were to tell me that's too high for Sadiq, it would not be the first time that I've heard that. So you can see 4 A+, which means that I grabbed the highest player on the draft board, and then 1 A because Sadiq was not the highest. And if other people agree with me, we'll see Sadiq go to the top. Okay, so 1 vote doesn't move a player all the way to the top. You're going to have to do a few first-round challenges to get the players you like at the top of the draft board. Okay. So Dallas Cowboys, I want to give a shout out to Greg Rector and Jeff Barnes from Team MBS Media. These are two Cowboys fans that have used the simulator. I've had several conversations with them. So I'm expecting to get a few A+ here. But let's talk about what we think Dallas will do in round one. Okay. So round one right now looks like this. Mendoza, Moore, Maui Noah, Bain, Fano, Tate, Lemon, Tyson. We see Caleb Downs going to the Chiefs, which was a result of earlier in the podcast. Arvell Reese to the Bengals, Mansour Delane to the Dolphins. Okay, what would the Cowboys do? Cowboys fans are really hoping Sonny Styles drops, and then they do need some corner help. At 20th overall, I think this is a question really then between TJ Parker, Jermod McCoy. We look a little bit further down, Caden McDonald, Cassius Howell's available. And let's go look on the second page and see if anybody jumps out for round one to Dallas. Colton Hood, maybe. But again, if we just look at the corner board, are we going to take Colton Hood over McCoy? There's a maybe there. Avion Terrell's probably a slot corner. Some people really like Chris Johnson in round one. And I'm going to say, what the heck, this time I'm going Chris Johnson here to Dallas in round one. So that was Sonny Styles, Chris Johnson. Okay, so what the simulator does is it makes sure Sonny Styles is off the board before Dallas's pick. What would Dallas do if Styles isn't available? Okay, Downs isn't available. Dallas does need a safety. Okay, Arvell Reese isn't available. Okay, and that would be a good candidate for Dallas. Okay, so what would they do in that situation? I do think this is a David Bailey landing spot in Dallas. And okay, so it also makes sure that Chris Johnson, who I took in round one earlier, is off the board. Okay, so what would Dallas do? Okay, so if the board fell like this, are they looking at Jordan Tyson? Are they looking at Jermod McCoy? And these are two players that have some injury concerns. And they could also be looking at CJ Allen. So I think CJ Allen with the need at linebacker over an injured McCoy or Tyson deserves some discussion. So I'm actually going to pick CJ Allen here. Okay, so in this mock, Styles is off the board, Bailey's off the board. Now, Peter Woods is sitting there. There was a discussion between Greg, Jeff, and I. Greg didn't like Peter Woods to Dallas in round one. Jeff Barnes said he would be great in Dallas. So I am going to, because that wasn't consensus, I'm going to go with another player. So Caleb Lomu to Dallas in round one, getting them a left tackle is a possibility. So I am going to go Caleb Lomu at 12 to Dallas over Delane and over Woods. Okay. And then with the second pick, the simulator makes sure Johnson and Allen are off the board. Okay. So what would Dallas do if those guys are off the board? Okay. So you can't get any of your linebackers. They've already been taken. I was told by Greg that 20 is too early for Thieneman, so he wouldn't do that here. So this to me feels like, Jordan Tyson, you can't really fall past 20 to Dallas, right? That's just really good value at that pick, even with the injury questions. So on this mock, Styles, Bailey, Lomu are off the board prior to Dallas's pick. Downs isn't available. What would Dallas do? So they do need a boundary corner. I also think this feels like a ceiling for Keldrick Falk. So at 12 to Dallas, I think because Dallas likes edges that can stop the run, I think that needs to be a discussion with Keldrick Falk going at 12 to Dallas. Okay. So if Falk goes at 12 to Dallas and Sadiq, Johnson, Allen, Tyson are off the board, but Kyle Lemon is dropped. Again, if we're comfortable taking Lemon in the top 10, there's no way he should be dropping past 20 to Dallas, kind of thing. So from a value standpoint, that's how I look at that. Okay, so with the next pick, if you look, Bailey, Lomu, Falk are off the board, and Styles is also off the board. What would Dallas do? If Caleb Downs is there, I do think that's Dallas's pick. I think they would even take Downs over Styles if given the choice of both. And then at pick 20, again, one of the few blue chip players in the class, it would be tough to take Love over Maui Noah. But I am going to say the grades on Love, Dallas has a need for a big play running back. I do think that this one would be Love at 20th overall. Okay, so you can see some A pluses because that means that I drafted the highest player on the draft card. Several A's, and I think you even saw a C in there for Chris Johnson because he was pretty far down. So that was the Dallas first round chat. Hey, Randy, I see you in the chat. Yeah, I think Tyson could drop to 20. Teams can be scared off for the injury, but once you get to the playoff teams, I think they would be willing to take that risk. So as we get further into the draft order, we'll probably have those conversations later. Let's go ahead and do the Rams here at 13. So the Rams, this is a Ty Simpson landing spot for me. So at pick 13, if Ty Simpson is there, I think they would take Simpson over Lomu. They need a tackle, but I do think investing in the quarterback that could sit behind Matthew Stafford is a good decision. Okay. And then at the back of round 1, Chris Johnson as a boundary corner makes a lot of sense to me. Okay. So this time Ty Simpson's off the board. What would the Rams do? Would they take Delane or Lomu? They have an immediate need at defensive back. I think that's Delane. I think Delane would be higher on their board than Lomu. Then what would the Rams do with the next pick? So CJ Allen is there. This is the late first round. I really like that pick. CJ Allen to the Rams. So Mansour Delane, CJ Allen. The Rams hit a home run in that first round, in my opinion. Okay, so now at pick 13, Simpson and Delane are off the board. Now, if we look at edge, I'm looking to see if Bailey is available, right? Did I miss where Bailey went? Oh, okay. Bailey went to pick before. We got to pay closer attention. Okay. What would they do? So this might be Lomu over Fano. I think left tackle is more important for the Rams. So this would be me saying it's Lomu over Maui Noah and Fano. But that's an interesting discussion I'd like to have with a Rams fan. Okay, so if they take Lomu in round 1, and then Johnson and Allen are off the board, Proctor's there, but they took Lomu. So I definitely don't think they would be double dipping at tackle. Would Anthony Hill Jr. be a possibility at 29? That's right now, that's where my brain is going. So Caden McDonald would be a good discussion here, in my opinion, for the reason that this is really good value for him. I don't know that the Rams need a defensive tackle, but I don't see McDonald getting too much further, let's say, than the Raiders, Jets, Cardinals, Giants, Browns, Commanders here in round. Well, okay, that's just the round 1 picks. Commanders don't have a round 2 pick. I don't see McDonald getting more than, let's say, 10 picks deep into round 2. So I'm going to say this is the rich get richer, and the Rams take McDonald over those other players. Like, I think the grade on McDonald would be higher than the grade on Anthony Hill. I think Hill fits a need better, but I think the grade on McDonald for the Rams would be higher. Stick with premium positions type thing. So, okay, so the Rams at 13. Simpson and Delane are off the board. Would they take Caleb Downs? They need secondary help. I think Caleb Downs to the Rams, if the first round, like, I don't think Downs by any means would be the highest player on the Rams board for pick 13. They would like Lomu and Delane better. But I don't know that you can pass on Downs if you're the Rams at pick 13. And then what would they do here if Johnson, Allen, and McDonald are off the board? So they need secondary help. Avion Terrell, slot corner, could play boundary. I'm not going to take Apney over Terrell. I would consider Caden Proctor here. And some people like Ahinakor, especially if he gets the city. And I would consider Anthony Hill Jr. here. So if they take Downs, and I'm just going to quickly look. So the wide receiver board looks like Surratt, Cooper, Bell. Maybe the Rams at the end of the first. Okay. I'm going to do Chris Bell here. This is just the rich get richer. So Bell had first round grades prior to his injury. And the Rams at the back of round 1, picking up Chris Bell, he wouldn't be rushed back. And I don't know that Bell gets to their second round pick. I like Caleb Downs, Chris Bell. I like that one. Okay, so this is the Rams at 13. Sadiq is available. McCoy is available. What would the Rams do if Simpson, Delane, Lomu, and Downs are off the board? I think this is Sadiq. To me, this is between Sadiq and Maui Noah. But I'm going to go Sadiq in round 1 to the Rams. Even though they took a tight end later in the draft last year, and I know they like him, Sadiq is just different. I think Kenyon Sadiq with Sean McVay, they were in on Brock Bowers the year Brock Bowers came out, and he never got to the Rams. So I really like Sadiq to the Rams. And then would the Rams be an ideal landing spot for Caden Proctor? And that would be like, so to me, this could also be, but they need defensive back. I'm going to go Colton Hood because while Proctor and Hood seem to be grading about the same, some people have a true first round grade on Proctor. Hood fits their need. 29 is borderline rich, but it's not like Beverly Hills rich for like where I'm seeing Hood go in other mocks. So Simpson, Johnson, Delane, Allen, Lomu, McDonald, Downs, Bell, Sadiq, Hood. If any Rams fan is watching, feel free to chime in what you think your team's needs are and which players grade best to be the 2 first-round selections for the Rams. Okay, so the next team in the draft order is going to be the Buccaneers. Okay, several Buccaneers draft professors, which would include Andrew Harbaugh, which writes for the USA Today, as well as J.T. Olson. So those two have done several mocks on the simulator. I am expecting some A-plus grades, meaning that the player at the top of the simulator already is probably who they would pick. So the Buccaneers need edge. The biggest issue with David Bailey being here would be, do you accept the character issues with Bailey? Okay, so I think David Bailey would be a good pick. Now, if David Bailey is off the board, what would the Buccaneers be looking at? And to me, this is like between Keldrick Falk, Kenyon Sadiq, TJ Parker. Those are the three. I'm not really considering Peter Woods right now. So I am going to say Kenyon Sadiq. If available, the Buccaneers are known to be in the tight end market this offseason. So if Bailey and Sadiq are off the board, what would the Buccaneers do? I think that's a Keldrick Falk landing spot. And Maui Noah was there, and I'm saying they would definitely be taking Keldrick Falk over Francis Maui Noah. Right? And that's part of the exercise of a first-round challenge is, yeah, we like Falk to the Buccaneers, but for example, TJ Parker, Mansour Delane, which of the two players, and Maui Noah is there? So Maui Noah is probably slightly higher graded than the two guys above him. Even Jordan Tyson with some injury concerns. I mean, could you imagine Tyson and Nick Buka on the same team? Now, I'm not a fan of spending first-round draft capital on the same position 2 straight years. About the only position I would do that would be offensive line or defensive line. I wouldn't be, going all Matt Millen and drafting a wide receiver like 3 out of the 4 straight years or something. So I would be probably TJ Parker over Mansour Delane here to fit the need. Okay, so this is an interesting one because if Bailey, Sadiq, Falk, and Parker are off the board before the Buccaneers pick, Caleb Downs dropped. And could you imagine Caleb Downs in that Todd Bowles defense? Like, that to me would be an awesome pick for the Buccaneers. So that would be David Bailey, Kenyon Sadiq, Keldrick Falk, TJ Parker, Caleb Downs. Okay, and then we'll go to the next team in the draft order. And that would be the Ravens. So the Ravens, this one's a little bit harder because they are in the midst of a coaching search to replace John Harbaugh. However, there are a couple of things about the roster that would be, let's say, predictable. I think they need a corner and they need interior offensive line. You can see that Vega Ione is sitting at the top of the board. So we can see that Reese, Delane, Styles, Lomu, Bailey, Woods are all off the board before the Ravens pick. So what would they be looking at? I think they would this is a good interior line class. If you're looking at players like Denzel Boston and Caden McDonald versus Vega Ione, I think that there's some better choices at positions of scarcity. So, for example, I would do Chris Johnson over Vega. Okay. If Chris Johnson is off the board and Peter Woods dropped to the Ravens, do you think they would pick him? I think so. Okay. So in this one, Mekhi Lemon dropped and Mansour Delane dropped. This does feel like the appropriate landing spot for Delane. I do think Lemon is graded. Again, if we're willing to take Lemon in the top 8 and he's falling to 16, Lemon would be the pick there. Okay. So now it gets a little bit interesting, right? Jordan Tyson, Mansour Delane. Again, if we're willing to take Tyson in the top 10 and we're at 16, I'm going to say that that's Jordan Tyson. Okay. And then if Johnson, Woods, Lemon, and Tyson are not available and Maui Noah dropped, I would think Maui Noah would be the pick. And I never took Vega Ione there. Just recognize that I skipped him, right? Never picked him once. Okay. So let's do the last first round challenge of this podcast. And this one is going to be the Detroit Lions. So To me, this is an interesting one because do we think with the contracts to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, plus they have Sam Laporta, that the Lions are investing in wide receiver? So if a wide receiver is here, so if we check the board, right now Boston and Casey Concepcion are both there. So the first question I would have is, do we agree that wide receiver is not going to be the right value for the Lions roster? They already have a lot invested in the position. So they do need edge and defensive line. You can see that those are some of the positions that are close to the top of the board. They also need a center, but I don't know that there's a center I would take at 17th overall. So I do like Keldrick Falk as an edge to the Lions in round 1. And I like TJ Parker as an edge to the Lions in round 1. Okay, so now you notice low moves at the top of the board. They also need defensive tackle help, and you notice that Fano is here too. So the question would be, what would they do? Now, I think they would probably be looking at Caden McDonald on the interior. That just feels like a really good Lions pick. Would they do it over Lomu? They do have an impending need at tackle. And the offensive line, yeah, I'm going to go offensive line here. I can't force the McDonald pick if Lomu is there. Okay. So if Falk, Parker, and Lomu are off the board for the Lions, I think this is a good Caden McDonald landing spot. Okay. And then if we look further down the draft board, Spencer Fano, Caleb Banks, Avion Terrell, Sadiq is there and Love is there. But again, the Lions have a decent amount invested in running back, including first-round capital in Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't see them going Jeremiah Love. So even if we're comfortable taking Love higher in the draft, and if you've seen like the first-round challenge for the Cardinals, I was willing to take Love there. And then when we did the first-round challenge for the Cowboys, I was willing to take Love, but I actually think the Love pick for Dallas was at 20, right? So no, I'm not looking at those guys there for the Lions. And then this would also be a spot where maybe CJ Allen comes into the conversation. But again, you can notice Mekhi Lemon right now is the 35th overall player on the board for the Lions. If Lemon's there, do we think the Lions would pick him? And I don't think they would, right? So that's why the players drop, right? If they're not there in round 1, if you skip them, they'll move down. That's the way I designed the algorithm. So, again, Chris Johnson, you've seen me pick him for other teams higher than this. But would he be a Lion? I don't think so, because the Lions have a lot of first and second round draft capital invested at corner. So it comes down to positions of need. Would the Lions be looking at Caleb Banks? I think Banks playing the final game, I'm going to go Caleb Banks over Ione, Tyson, McCoy, and Fano. Right? So those two guys, Caden McDonald and Caleb Banks, the lack of an A+ means other people don't agree with me. So those guys are high on the board, but they're not at the top, and that means more people haven't picked them in that spot. Okay, and we will do one more, and we'll close it out with the Vikings. So shout out to both Andrew Harbaugh and Hank, two Vikings fans that have used the simulator. So we've talked through some of this. I'm expecting Jeremiah Love to be the highest player on the Vikings board. So if Jeremiah Love falls to 18, I think that pick is sprinted up. Okay. Now, if Jeremiah Love is off the board, what would the Vikings do? So Hank seems to think they would go Sadiq. I don't know that if you have TJ Hawkinson that you spend first round draft capital on tight end. That's just an opinion. I do think Caden McDonald to a Brian Flores defense makes a lot of sense. Okay. So if Love and McDonald are off the board, I think this is a Caleb Banks landing spot. You should be in the conversation for the Vikings. If Love, McDonald, and Banks are off the board, I think this is a Jermod McCoy landing spot. And if Love, McDonald, Banks, McCoy are off the board, I think this is an Avion Terrell landing spot. Okay. So that concludes this podcast. Every once in a while, you will see me come on and I will show you what some of the functionality in the simulator is. For those that were watching, thank you very much. If you want more content, Draft Professor is here every day. So we podcast at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern every weeknight. We're here Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. We're here Sundays at 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. And we will have many different people coming on the channel to talk about draft. We try not to duplicate a subject during the week. So, if you're watching like one group on, let's say, Wednesday night at 9 p.m., they tend to not duplicate, and then they won't duplicate whatever else is going on the channel that week. So, Randy, great to see you in the chat. You can catch Randy. He has recorded a couple of these podcasts with us, specifically for the Patriots. So if you go to the channel and you look up the Patriots mock drafts, you'll actually see Randy on the camera with me doing some Patriots. So Randy, thanks for stopping by as I was going through some of the teams in the draft order. So for all the draft professors, there are 110 of us. My name is Jim. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and we will see you on a podcast again tomorrow morning.